Hello and thank you for joining us on Newsweek, where we highlight some of the biggest stories that made the headlines recently. I am Harcourt. This week, federal government warns foreign powers to steer clear of country's internal issues. And also, Finance Minister says Nigeria spends $600 million monthly on fuel imports as Senate queries $1.5 billion spending on Port Harcourt Refinery. And later on the show, Qatar annuls sale of Nigerian Air to Ethiopian airline. All the details in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. This week, the federal government warned foreign countries to stay clear of the nation's internal affairs. The warning came against the backdrop of foreign flags being flown during the ongoing protest against hardship in the country, especially in some northern states, including Kano, Kaduna, and Zamfara, and the arrest of some foreigners as sponsors of the protest. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tuga, who gave the warning while briefing members of the diplomatic corps in Abuja, however, highlighted the importance of cordial international relationships. Of course, right here to discuss this with me today, I've got Olufemi Lawson, a Senior Special Assistant to Ondo State Governor on Public Enlightenment. Good to have you on the show today.
Good evening.
Thank you so much. And I also have Nelson Ekujimi, ever vibrant political analyst. Good to have you here too.
Thank you very much.
I'm so happy to have the both of you here with me today, so we can have a very smooth sail going through the show. All right, Olufemi Lawson, let me start with you quickly. Now, does allowing foreign interference suggest a crack in our security system, and what or who can be blamed for this?
Well, we should be concerned because most of the issues around the protest, which has exposed some of these scenarios being witnessed, are actually issues of internal concerns, issues of our economy, issues of internal security, issues of the citizens' welfare. And the moment we begin to get to that point, that citizens are not only flying flags of countries, not just ordinary countries, but countries which have been known to interfere in the governance, not even in young democracies like ours, but even in older democracies, including the United States. We know the role of Russia, according to reports, during the last the previous presidential election in the United States, one of the most matured so-called democracies in the world. And the fact that, at that point, we have seen citizens even calling for military intervention in our current polity, then I think it will not be proper for any government to sit back and just consider this as mere, part of demonstrations, but rather something that must be taken seriously, especially when you understand that, what was ordinarily meant to be a very civil, organized civilian process, the peaceful protest became so violent at some point, became so tough to the extent that we saw reports of how people were being paid to participate in that protest. So government must be concerned, and I think it should give every Nigerian who knows how far we have come to attain this democratic journey serious concerns.
All right. Well, Nelson, Olufemi just hinted that we should not just overlook this and call it just mere demonstration. Now, from your perspective, these foreign flags were mostly captured in some parts of the north. Is this to say there's a failure on the part of the northern leaders towards their people in not giving them enough enlightenment to understand the gravity of what they did or what they intend doing moving forward?
Well, I want to take us back to the alert issued by the Department of State Services before the so-called protests, where the DSS warned and alerted Nigerians that this protest was sinister, it had violent undertone, and it also had foreign influence. And everything the DSS alerted Nigerians about came to play in the protest. So it's not about failure of leadership in the north. It was a deliberate ploy by those who organized the protest, because as I speak, I remember very well that on the second day of the protest, the Inspector General of Police, held a press conference where he said his invitation to the organizers of the protest still remains open. And as we speak, we don't know the real organizers, even though some, like we say in our local parlance, Mogbomoya, are trying to claim ownership. You know, Mogbomoya is somebody who just plays into your party or into your event. So this flying of flags, we were warned about it. Even the Nigerian police, a day to the so-called protest, because a lot of us knew that as much as we know we had economic challenges, we're also suspicious that some persons were trying to make political capital out of it. And that was exactly what happened. Because you saw protests degenerate to flying flags of foreign countries, calling on the military to come and take over governance. That was an assault on the sovereignty of Nigeria, and it is unacceptable.
All right, quickly, before I round this off with Olufemi. Now, we understand that foreign fingers have been spotted throughout Africa. Yeah, because sometimes, too, it may seem they only seek to exploit anywhere they set their foot on. Now, after this episode, what do you think can be done to further rectify things and to avoid a repeat?
Well, the security agencies have made arrests, and the Chief of Defense Staff said they are going to investigate and ensure that every perpetrator behind this, because we all saw that actually this assault on our sovereignty was sponsored, and the foreign influence cannot be ruled over. Don't forget that Nigeria is the chairman. Nigeria heads the Economic Committee of West African States as we speak. And the Economic Committee of West African States is at the forefront of the clamor for return to civilian democracy in Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. And those, if you look at the history of those three countries in the last couple of months, you can link where the influence of flying those flags might have come from.
Okay.
So one expects that the security agencies as well as the government, even though arrests have been made, will ensure that the law take its course on these persons and interests. All
right, Olufemi, before we round up this topic quickly, now, in a few seconds, what do you think should be done to further enlighten people on the dangers of even hoisting foreign flags in their own country, even though there is a demonstration?
A lot of people who have been involved in this are, in the real sense of it, ignorance of the implications. Even the sponsors, even though they know, would never let them know. And that is why we must deepen the citizens' government engagement. Particularly when you look at the role of the national orientation agencies. And I personally do not believe that every time we need to engage our citizens or enlighten them, we must push it to Abuja. And that is what the Ondo State government is currently doing. You must enlighten your citizens at your state level. States must also support the federal government by creating units to engage and enlighten the citizens. A lot of these citizens are not even aware of the implication of this. So we have a task on our hand beyond what national orientation.
Bottom line, enlightenment.
Enlightenment.
All right. Now we'll go on a quick break right now, and of course, Newsweek continues in a moment. Stay with us. Many thanks. Now, thank you for joining. All right, the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, revealed that Nigeria spends as much as $600 million monthly on petrol importation. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Senate has raised questions over the 2021 approval of 1.5 billion naira for the turnaround maintenance of the Port Harcourt Refinery. Consequently, the upper legislative chamber lamented that it was unfair and wrong to treat government businesses or public enterprises as an orphan, while private businesses are flourishing and thriving. Now, Olufemi, quickly, now, how bad can it get with our refineries hearing this humongous figures, spending $600 million on fuel imports? Now, why did we allow this rot for so long without a workable solution?
We've been on this journey for a long time. This didn't start in 2021. From the days of former President Obasanjo through the Yar'Adua era, Goodluck Jonathan, coming to President Buhari, we've had year in, year out, the Nigerian government investing so much in the turnaround maintenance of our refineries. But we have consistently insisted The government have no business, especially when you look at the fact that for over 20 years, we cannot even return one out of the 4 refineries in the country to functional purpose. So why should government continue to invest in a business it has no business in being involved in? And every year you've had, maintain a refinery work by June, then September, then you hear promises of 3 months, 6 months at some point. It is very glaring that government has no business in continuously running those refineries, especially when you look at how much this nation has invested in those refineries, especially when you look at the number of years we have waited to get these 4 refineries working, to the extent that we are now dependent on importation of refined crude products into the country.
But we've heard that there's been some external influences collaborating with internal forces as well, not to allow the refineries to work.
It's going to work because those refineries have not been wholesomely handed over by the government. If the government has been courageous enough to privatize those refineries and hand it over for people who can do the business, who are expert in the business, I'm very sure no private investor would allow itself to be manipulated by any external influence when it's out to make profit, when it has invested so much in procuring or acquiring those refineries. But because it is still seen as an asset of the government, because it is still seen as an asset that can be manipulated through some of these influences, that is where we are today. And until government totally removes itself from the administration of those refineries, I don't think those refineries are going to work.
We'll come back to if the government can totally, hands off. But Mr. Nelson, very quickly, yeah. Now, the Senate is tending to probe the money spent on the resuscitation of refineries, over $1.5 billion right now. Do you think anything good will come out of this investigation?
Well, I want to give the Senate the benefit of the doubt.
Okay.
Because that is part of their oversight functions. It's their constitutional responsibility.
Right.
And as Nigerians, we must support them because we have no other country to ensure that justice is done with regards to that expenditure, such that the people are not shortchanged. So I think I must commend the Senate if they have suspected, because when you are investigating, it means you are trying to gather facts. And one only hopes that when these facts are gathered and persons or groups or interests
that are affected
are indicted, are suspected, when you see the light, I hope the Senate will take the whole org of inviting the security agencies and say, look, we have helped you to gather this fact. Continue with the investigation and let the law take its course.
Okay, I want to take you up on this. If the Senate is to probe what is on ground at the moment, what areas should they really be looking out for during this investigation? Do you have a hint?
Well, I want to believe that the areas they should be looking out for is the area of the expenditure of that money. Because don't forget, the Senate has the power and authority to invite experts to help them in their job, because they are not experts in every field.
Yeah.
So where they are lacking, they'll bring in experts to come and help them verify.
Auditing of the books.
Auditing of the books. The materials supplied, is it at the actual cost? And then, if they have done that, I think the Senate can now petition based on that findings. To the security agencies, because don't forget, the Senate can only investigate and say this is what we have found.
They can't prosecute.
They can't prosecute.
All right. Now, Olufemi, before we round off this topic quickly, now, what structures should be put in place and what penalties should await culprits who would be indicted in this sabotage of refineries? Now, what exactly should be done? It appears that refineries sometimes just have a mind of their own not to work again. So those who actually sabotage refineries, what penalties should await them if you were to...
There are established laws guiding activities, not just of refineries or institutions of government. I think the current administration of President Bola Tinubu must deepen the conviction of the Nigerian people.
But there's been a call for a total, audit of NNPCL as a body.
Not just the NNPC, the entire petroleum sector. Because it is the petroleum sector is not only regulated by the NNPC, the other regulatory institutions. And there have been a lot of issues around the oil and gas sector in Nigeria over a couple of years. Now that the administration is bringing to fore some of these issues that have been hidden in the oil and gas sector, I think the administration of President Bola Tinubu must deepen its commitment further by ensuring that there are independent auditing, assessment of what has been done in that sector in the past, what is currently going on, because that is going to be a key way in moving forward. I am very sure that if you look at the steps that have been taken over the past couple of months by the administration in repositioning the oil and gas sector, it will not be achievable if the question of transparency and accountability is left behind. The administration is making radical moves at making these refineries work, making the liberalization process work, and getting private sector involvement. But all this will not be fruitful if the administration does not put same energy into ensuring transparency and accountability. So I'm personally of the opinion that as much as the administration of President Bola Tinubu is investing in upgrading, making sure that the oil and gas sector is reformed, it must also deepen the question of transparency and accountability, especially on those steps that have been taken in the past in that
just
sector.
Before I let you off the hook, $600 million spent on fuel importation every month. Now, if these refineries come back to work, are we certain that this monies will drop drastically?
It will definitely drop, not even if it's operated by the Nigerian government. Whoever operates the refinery locally, even if it's prioritized, will naturally, reduce whatever is spent on importation of petroleum to Nigeria.
All right, let's move on to our final topic for the day. And finally, this week, Justice Ambrose Louis Alagua of the Federal High Court in Lagos declared null and void the sale of Nigerian Air to Ethiopian Airline. The court ordered that the proposed establishment of a national carrier, Nigerian Air, by the federal government should not be carried out. The judge made the order while granting the relief sought by the registered trustees of the airline operators of Nigeria and 5 others in the aviation industry. Now, the judge held that all the relief sought were granted except for relief number 8, asking for damages of 2 billion naira. Of course, I've got Olufemi Lawson still with me and Nelson Ekujimi. Now, Nelson, very quickly, Nigerians rejoice that finally a national carrier is set to be back into operations, In another breath, negotiations were in the pipeline to sell it off. What exactly are the issues here?
Honestly, the airline industry is one, if we look back into history, is one that has been bedeviled by a lot of problems. But we must give kudos to the President Minister for Aviation and Aerospace Development for the wonderful job he has been doing to ensure that the policies and the structure of the airline industry, aviation, runs according to law. The sale of the Nigerian Airways or the collaboration with the Ethiopian Airline is one that a lot of questions have been raised about by stakeholders. And if they have gone to court, you and I know for free that the court is not an Owembe party venue. The court is a place for serious business.
True.
For the judge to have granted that relief, the judge must have been convinced beyond reasonable doubt. So one expects that in as much as we are clamoring for a Nigerian Air, the Nigerian national carrier, I think it must be done with utmost sense of patriotism and nationalism, such that the Nigerian people will not be shortchanged in any way.
All right. Now, Olufemi Lawson, quickly, there was a claim that during the bidding process, irregularities were spotted with Ethiopian Airline to be favored, which is entirely owned by the Ethiopian government. What do you think was at play here? Because apparently they were tilting everything to ensure that the Ethiopian Airline get the big bag and leave us in shambles.
If you have listened to conversations around the old Nigerian Air charade, when this new administration came on board and the revelations made after the exit of the former minister, Adesreka, you come to realize that the whole thing called Nigerian Air was a black market arrangement by Adesreka and those people who conspired with him, to the extent that, an aircraft was chartered, branded, flown into Abuja, in less than 2 hours, thrown back into Addis Ababa. And also, so the revelations are quite real, coupled with the fact that the court has also affirmed that what was called Nigeria was just a black market, abracadabra, imposed to confuse Nigerians. That, nonetheless, it's impressive that the FCC is already involved in the probe of that charade called the Air Nigeria contract. And furthermore, the current Aviation Ministry is also deeply involved in ensuring that every shenanigan surrounding the Air Nigeria charade are exposed. That moving forward, we must not leave it at the fact that the deal is nullified. Truly there was no Air Nigeria. We must get to the extent that a lot of our Commonwealth was involved. We invested into this Air Nigeria charade. Okay. Who was paid what? How much of our money was invested into the Memorandum of Understanding and all those. So beyond this judgment, the government of Nigeria haven't been served this judgment, I know in the next couple of days, must also take steps in ensuring that every kobo spent on that charade is probed, everyone involved is brought to come and answer questions, because this investment was not done by individuals. It was done on behalf of the Nigerian people. A lot of our resources went into this. Now the court has said this was a nullity because this was not even a due process arrangement. And that even while Nigerians were crying, we were being scammed and nobody ever gave reason to probe until this current ministry came on board. Now that the court has ruled, the government must not leave it at only ensuring that, the court has nullified the agreement, but ensure that whoever has been involved in that charade called Air Nigeria, which has been used to take a lot of resources out of our Commonwealth, must be brought to come and answer questions. Okay,
why you actually went quite lengthy on that particular path, it appears that when ministers occupy positions, they seem to just do what they like with reckless abandon. What structure would you suggest is enacted to ensure that if it's maybe first quarter, ministers should come and do some kind of a KPI on what they have done so far, so that some kind of auditing of their work? Should they be given that 4 years to just run without checking and looking into what the activities are? Because if there was a structure to actually rectify that, I don't think this minister would have gone that path.
A lot of times, ministers, commissioners, or appointees of government take advantage of the weakness of their boss, their principal, to embark on such shenanigans like we have witnessed in the past. Yeah. But I think it's impressive that we are beginning to have governors, and now we have a president who would not even listen to the report from your ministry, but will rather rely on public opinion. What are the citizens saying, to even query your ministry? So moving forward, I think accountability and transparency should not be left in the hand of appointees, but rather the head. During the recent protest, I listened to the president broadcast. What the president first stated was the admittance of responsibility. He took responsibility for whatever. That is leadership. So government must be run in such a way that whoever is called a leader must be seen to be ready to take responsibility, not ministers, directors, or whoever. And when that is done, you can be assured rather that whoever is now appointed would naturally be responsible, not necessarily waiting for when summoned by the president or when queried by the citizens.
All right, Mr. Nelson, your time is already up. I just want you to also weigh in on this. Now, ministers, what structure should be in place for them to be accountable to a large extent, so they don't have the 4 years long range to do what they like?
Well, I believe that in every
system,
every facet of our life, there are stakeholders involved. And don't also forget, we have a National Assembly that even has an oversight function over that ministry. Earlier on, we talked about the National Assembly, the Senate, probing the turnaround maintenance of the refineries. Yeah. That is the work of the oversight functions of the Committee on Petroleum, and oil and gas. So one expects, because a lot of times when people are put into office, like that has been my clarion call over the years, that look, governance is not only the responsibility of those in office.
So do you agree there's some kind of a collaborative corruption ring that does not allow certain people who are to do their functions carry that well?
No, I won't want to run with that generalization because I don't have the fact. But I would say it's an indictment on the rest of us
Okay.
We didn't play our role. Because don't forget, some of the persons that you could be accusing of corruption might have abdicated their responsibility.
Okay.
Or maybe they didn't know that this is what I'm supposed to do. So one expects those agencies of government, because even as a minister, statutorily, there are roles assigned to you. You cannot execute some projects without taking it to the FEC for approval. And there are agencies of state, like the Bureau of Procurement, you know, that if you are making some procurement, they have to go through the statutory procedures. So it is those agencies of states that are meant to check government expenses, government, you know, activities, that we should wake up. Then we, as stakeholders in the Nigerian polity, must also put our eyes on things that affect our existence as a people.
All right. Thank you very much, Nelson Ekujimi, political analyst, for your time on the show today.
Thank you very much.
And of course, Olufemi Lawson, Senior Special Assistant to Ondo State Governor on Public Enlightenment. Thank you for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
All right, and that's a show for today. Remember, you can follow the conversation on our social media platforms at TVC News NG or on our website at tvcnews.tv. I am Mark Otabo. Until next week, goodbye.